Molweni manene na manene kazi, namkele kile kwinkubo. Ngomgqibelo siza kubukela thina sonke eMonte Carlo eMonaco intshatsheli yethu yehlabathi uSivenathi Nontshinga akhusele intshinga yakhe alwe no Adrian Curiel. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. On Saturday, we will all be watching on the zone as our only major world champion, our IBF junior flyweight champion of the world, Sivenathi Nontshinga, makes a voluntary defense against his Mexican challenger, Adrian Curiel. Is it an easy voluntary defense, or is it perhaps a banana skin that we don't know about? Stick around and let's break down the fight. Masikazulule umlo apa. The special one, Sive Nontshinga. He won the vacant IBF title in a war against Hector Flores Calisto in Mexico, and he won well enough in his mandatory title defense in front of his home crowd in East London that I was privileged enough to be ringside for when he beat Reggie Suganov. He won clearly on points, but it was a taxing fight for him. Suganov was there all the way. Now he's got a not a mandatory, but a voluntary title defense as a main supporting bout on Joe Cordina's defense of his IBF junior lightweight title in Monte Carlo in Monaco of all places. And the voluntary challenger, the guy that they've chosen, is a Mexican by the name of Adrian Curiel. Now Curiel's got a record of 23 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, and in those 23 wins he's got only 4 knockouts, but he's never been stopped in those 4 losses. So he looks on paper at least to be a suitable voluntary title defense, a guy with a respectable record who will probably go rounds because he's never been knocked out, but he doesn't threaten because he doesn't have many knockouts. Is that the truth? Well, let's look a bit closer to who Adrian Curiel is. Now, he went on an 11-fight win streak in the beginning of his career, and his first loss was a 10-rounder to Daniel Valladares, who went on to become the WBO minimum weight or straw weight or mini flyweight champion, whatever you call boxing's lowest weight division. So he's been in against some good guys, and his last loss was in 2021 when he lost a majority decision to Christian Hernandez Gonzalez. And I've watched that fight, and what I see in that fight, the last loss of Curiel, is he's a very sort of a basic fighter in a certain sense. He comes in with his hands up. It takes a long time to get started. He starts slow, but then he just keeps marching forward. And like a typical Mexican fighter, he bangs the body, goes upstairs to the head. He likes to throw the straight right, and he also can fight in the southpaw position. He doesn't switch hit, but he does change over from time to time, and he stays with southpaw for a while, and then he goes back to orthodox, and he does it quite effectively. In that loss, I could tell that he doesn't have a lot of head movement. He just keeps his hands up like that, and he keeps coming forward, and he just pushes his hands in front of the punches. But he's relatively easy to find. And then I went and looked at his fights after that, because since that loss, he's won 7 fights with a technical draw sandwich in between. And I watched some of his other fights that went after that fight, and I could see he's improved quite a lot. He's got a good chin. He doesn't knock guys out, but he seems to be a bit heavy-handed. There's definitely something on those body shots, but although he's not a knockout puncher, but he seems physically very strong. A guy can not be a knockout puncher, but he can still be strong, because what I see with Curiel is people can't help but being backed up by him. He keeps going forward, and he keeps backing his opponent up. He keeps him on the back foot all the time. And what I could see in his later fights, his more recent fights, he's still a bit of a slow starter. He's prone to getting caught in the early rounds, but then he gets into it more and more. He's not as slow a starter as he used to be in his earlier fights, and he's added a bit of head movement. He still, I won't characterize him as slick, but he does move his head a lot, and he fights equally well as a southpaw and an orthodox fighter, which is quite interesting. Now, he, I suspect, can only fight one way. He backs up his opponent because he seems more thick-set and physically stronger than Sive, if I just look at their bodies. So he backs up his opponent and he keeps throwing punches, he keeps banging away to the head and body, and he takes whatever his opponent throws his way, and he just keeps going and he wins on points like that mostly. Not a lot of knockouts, as I've said. Now, I think for him to beat Sivenathi Nontshinga, he's not slick enough to outbox him. What I've noticed about Curiel, he can jab, but he doesn't really jab. He's not a consistent jabber. The jabs he throws is few and far in between. And even though he comes forward, because he's got such a steady forward pace, even though he comes forward, he's not great at cutting off a ring. You know, he seems to battle to pin his opponents on the ropes in the corner and keep them there. So there's that as well. So we know Sive can fight two different styles. You know, he can go in there and he can have a brawl like he did with Flores when he won the title, and he can go into that war of attrition mode like he did in some of his earlier fights against Ivan Soriano. But then in the other fights, like in the Eliminator against Christian Araneta, and also in his fight against Regis Suganov, when he fights with a guy that goes forward all the time and pushes him back, he can box very well on the fly and use his hand and foot speed to get away. So there's two ways he can fight. He can fight Curiel. I think the one thing about Adrian Curiel, he doesn't fight well when he's being backed up. In one of his fights that he won against Hugo Hernandez, for a moment, Hernandez backed him up, and then he did much better against Curiel, but he couldn't sustain it. Curiel was physically too strong. Pretty soon he kept pushing him back again, and that's where Curiel fights well. So if Sive can, especially early in the fight, I think early in the fight Curiel was a bit vulnerable to being caught flush, and I think Sive should take advantage of that and start quickly, much like he did against Regis Suganov, where he knocked him down. Because Curiel is open for the uppercut, he walks onto shots. So if I'm Sivenathi Nontshinga, I'll try and catch Curiel with something, try and hurt him, and see if I can't get him backing up. If Sive can back up Curiel, the fight is easy, because he doesn't fight well backing up. So whether he can do that is a different question. I kind of think that Curiel is a bit too strong to be consistently backed up. So I do think Sive might catch him early and might score a knockdown, much like he did against Regis Suganov. But I think it's going to be hard for him to keep to back up Curiel. So the other option for Sive is he's got to win like he did against Araneta, like he did against Suganov, boxing on the fly, jabbing, making him walk into shots, using his superior hand speed and step around Curiel. And that's what I suspect he will do, because for Curiel to win, he's got to put the pressure on Sivenathi Nontshinga, he's got to slow him down, and he's got to outwork him. So I think Sive has to fight, get on him early, catch him with those uppercuts, see if he can hurt him, if there's any possibility of backing him up. If not, he's got to hit and move and hit and move. And Sive is good at showing lateral movement. So he's got to stay away from the second hand. When Curiel is on an orthodox stand, the right hand comes through a straight right. When he goes to the southpaw, it just switches. He's quite effortless now. He switches stances, and then the straight left comes through. So Sivenathi Nontshinga is not going to only have to move one way around like he did against Suganov. He's going to have to change directions here as Curiel changes his stances, which I'm sure he will. And then also watch for when Curiel gets close. Private combinations, get out, because Curiel squares up when he's in close. Where Curiel does his best work, he's also most prone to being hit. So I'm thinking Sivenathi Nontshinga start quick, and then has to box and move, and give Curiel angles. Curiel's never been knocked out, so it would be great if Sivenathi Nontshinga can be the first guy to stop him. Somehow I don't think it's going to happen. It could happen if he hits him often enough, but I'm not so sure if he can stop Curiel, and I'm not so sure if he can back him up. You know, that's what I'm worried about. But I don't think Adrian Curiel's got enough layers to his game. I don't think he cuts off the ring well enough for a talent like Sivenathi Nontshinga. But I think he's going to be a bit tougher than what you expect for a voluntary defense, an easier fight. I think it's not necessarily going to be an easier fight than, say, Regis Suganov. It's going to be a fight that's going to challenge Sive, but I do think he's going to win well enough. I don't think there will be any doubt of the outcome in the end. So I expect Sivenathi Nontshinga to win this fight clearly on points. Tell me in the comment section, what do you guys think? Who do you have in this fight? Curiel posting an upset, Sivenathi Nontshinga winning. Do you think it's going to be a knockout? Do you think it's going to be points? And why do you think so, most importantly? If you've watched this far, please punch that like button. YouTube algorithms like that. And if you feel so inclined, please remember to subscribe and share amongst your boxing networks. I really appreciate that. And until we see each other again, Pakamisani.